Welcome to the Small Church Podcast, where faith, community, and ministry intersect in the unique context of smaller congregations. I'm your host, Tony Marr, and I'm thrilled to be joined by two men who are convinced they're a little bit more talented than I am.
That is right. I'm Robert Kill, one of those supposedly more talented guys, co-host and fellow small church leader. Together, we're here to explore the challenges, triumphs, and inspiring stories within the tight-knit communities that make up our smaller churches.
And I'm Bruce Montgomery, the one here to bring even more to the table than these two and offer a unique perspective to our conversation.
So whether you believe this talent hierarchy or not, you're in for a treat. If you're a pastor, a church member, or just curious about the world of leadership, you're in the right place.
Each episode, we dive into topics that matter to you, from innovative ministry ideas to navigating the unique dynamics of a smaller congregation.
So grab your cup of coffee, settle in, and let's journey together through the wonderful tapestry of small church life.
This is the Small Church Podcast.
Well, welcome into the Small Church Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Marr, and I'm excited to be in the studio today with two guests that are very, very important to me. We had to call a little bit of an audible this week on the show. So normally we record first thing Wednesday morning, and Robert had a family emergency come up late, a personal issue that happened, and we had to postpone our recordings for him to address some things and deal with some things that he needed to take care of. And so I'm sure he'll talk about that some next week on the next episode, but didn't want to give out any of that personal information without him being here to talk more about that. He is okay, just going through some difficult family situations right now that we'll talk about more in future episodes. Bruce wanted to give an update on Bruce. Bruce is moving out of the rehabilitation facility and moving back home. He will have home health care. Carol will need all the help and support that she can get. So could please continue to keep Bruce and Carol and their family in your thoughts and in your prayers, and also be praying for Robert and his family, the entire Kell family, as they are dealing with some really sad things that have taken place the past few days. What this did give is an opportunity for me to do something that I've wanted to do for a long time. When we first started outlining what we wanted this show to look like, and we were brainstorming different episode ideas, things that we wanted to get to, today's episode is one that I've been excited about, that I've been thinking about, and I've wanted to do for a very long time. And today we are going to discuss the experiences of being a PK, being a pastor's kid. And I know that for a lot of our listeners out there, you have children, maybe some that are still in the home, maybe some that have grown up and moved out of the home, maybe some that have grown up, moved out of the home, and now have moved back into the home. But regardless, this is something that there's a lot of statistics, there's a lot of studies that have been done over the years on the effects of growing up within the church as a pastor's kid. And so welcome to the Small Church Podcast. My kids, at least two of my kids, I've got my son Camden and my daughter McKenna, that coincidentally enough, my daughter McKenna, her birthday is tomorrow, and she will be turning 18 years old tomorrow. So she'll be leaving in just a few weeks to head off to college. To start her freshman year there. Dad is very, very sad and depressed about that, as his younger brother. And so I don't know that younger brother is going to say much during this episode. One, because he doesn't want to talk on a microphone, and two, because he's just sad about his sister leaving for college and turning 18 tomorrow. So guys, welcome into the office and welcome to the Small Church Podcast.
Thanks.
McKenna, how are you doing today?
Good.
You're doing good?
Yep.
So, McKenna, tell us just a little bit about yourself. You're getting ready to head off to college. You're going to study something, and let our listeners know a little bit about what you would like to be doing with your life.
Yeah, so I leave for Maryville College in just about 2-3 weeks. I'm going to be studying English, writing and communications. So I'm very excited about all of that.
Yeah, you want to be a writer, and you've done a lot of writing already. And for your experience and your age, you've had quite the resume building already. You've done some really incredible things. And something that has been amazing about McKenna, that I'll brag on my daughter a little bit to our listeners out there, is that from your youngest days, you have been very artistic. You have been very creative. And I say this to anyone that knows you, and even a lot of people that don't know you, you have the most compassionate heart of anyone that I've ever met. That from the moment when you were old enough to walk and talk, I would take you with me when I would do hospital visitations. When I was a full-time pastor in a church setting, I would take you with me because you had more compassion and empathy than I've ever had. And you would crawl up into the hospital bed with people and pray for them as a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old. You would just show such a sense of compassion for them. And God was moving in your life in incredible ways from a very young age. Something else that's very exciting that I'll just go ahead and share on air, that just a couple of weeks ago, actually, you made the decision, and I had the honor and privilege to baptize you. And so that was something that as a dad was one of my favorite moments of being a dad and getting to be a part of that. And so proud of you. But today we're not talking about that. We're not talking about your writing. We're not talking about you going off to college anymore that we did. What we want to talk about is what the last 18 years of your life have been as a preacher's kid. And we have to make a little bit of a disclaimer here, because your older sister, Jocelyn, really grew up with me being full-time in the church. You did for about the first half of your life, but for the last 7 or 8 years, I haven't been a full-time lead pastor in a church, but you've been a part of us leading a house church for a couple of years. Then you've been a part of your dad doing an interim ministry at a very small church that we went to every single week for about 2.5 years. And so you've got a lot of different experiences. The first half of your life, I was the lead pastor at very large churches and very progressive churches. And so you've had this different experiences and many different dynamics that you've had the opportunity to experience. And your brother sitting over here just kind of looking at us. Maybe he'll chime in at some point in time, but I doubt it. But so Ken, I think that you and I are going to carry the conversation here. So just go ahead and start us off. How do you feel about sharing your experiences as a pastor's kid here on this show?
I'm excited. I mean, I'm a pretty big podcast listener myself, so I think it'll be fun to be on one and see what that's like.
Have you ever listened to the Small Church podcast?
Oh, yeah. Every day.
Let me see that those fingers are crossed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's okay, Kenna. I didn't expect you to have listened to this show. So, McKenna, there are a lot of studies out there that have been done, and there are a lot of stories that have been told. There are a lot of misconceptions out there that people have about pastors' kids. A lot of people say that pastors' kids grow up to be rebellious, and pastors' kids are the worst teenagers, and they rebel from the church, they rebel from their parents, they go wild, they do all this crazy stuff. And then there are statistics out there that say that pastors' kids turn away from the church when they get older. What are some of the misconceptions that people have about pastors' kids that maybe you would like to address?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said, it's a delicate balance between them either becoming very rebellious and disagreeing with a lot of things, or either often become entitled and think that it gives them a sense of power. Being a pastor's kid is something that I've kind of felt like I've seen growing up.
Yeah. So what are some of your earliest memories of growing up in the church as a pastor's kid?
Definitely the long Sundays. You know, having a pastor as a dad, and you get there early to help set up and get the day going. And then usually at the church that I had growing up, we had 2 services at least every Sunday. And so, you know, you'd have the first hour where we would kind of do the kids service. That was always really fun. And then by the second hour, you would have the choice to, you know, branch out and go to the adult services or stay in your kids one for the second hour. And obviously most of the time we chose the kid one because we knew we'd have to be quiet and behave, and the older service. But yeah, you know, get there early, stay late to help tear down. But it was never boring. It was always very exciting to be in that community all day.
Yeah, we were, for most of your childhood, we were a part of a church plant that we started a church. And so we didn't have a building for quite a while, for several years. And so it was getting there at 6 a.m., setting up the YMCA, setting up chairs, sound systems, children's, and then doing 2 services and then tearing it back down and all again. So your experience was a little bit different than what a lot of people had. What are, as we went from being in a church plant to being in a more stable church environment with a building and all of that, did those feelings change? And then going from leaving that environment to doing house church, and we did house church for a couple of years, and then in an interim ministry environment where I wasn't the full-time person there, but yet we were still viewed as the pastor and you the pastor's kids. And, and so what were all those different experiences like for you?
They were definitely different for sure. And I think that growing up in a bigger church, the one that you started, and kind of watching it be built from the ground up was a really cool experience. I mean, I remember when we just had the foundation that the church was going to be built on, and it was just started being physically built. You know, we had a lot of events going on there where we would bring little trays and things to fill up the dirt and all those things. And so it's kind of, you build the community that you're going to be in. And so then you kind of get very attached to that. And so having that church and being a part of that for so long and so young was definitely different from when we evolved then to house church. But honestly, I would say doing house church was probably the favorite church of mine and communities, because it just felt like so small and quaint, and it was really just about getting together with the close people that you love and worshiping and talking about God.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. How have you seen difficulties in being in church your entire life? You see the good side of things, but you also see the bad side of things. You see the way that, you know, sometimes as much as adults, we tried to protect you from so many of the things. When dad had a hard day at work, when dad had a difficult conversation, when someone was upset with dad or things that were going on, as much as we tried, I know that there were times that you guys picked up on those kind of things. What were the difficulties that you faced being a pastor's kid?
I mean, obviously, since you have worked in the church, it's a heavy job. There's people coming to you, confiding in you, asking to pray for you. And, you know, it's kind of a not necessarily a burden, because I feel like that's probably the wrong word to use, but you're taking on a lot of people's pain and helping them work through it. And so I guess kind of seeing things in the church that people are struggling with in their personal life or their own faith that you probably wouldn't see otherwise if you aren't so closely ingrained in that community was pretty intense.
Yeah. One of the big reasons that I wanted to leave full-time vocational ministry was the toll that it was taking on the family, that it just requires so much time. And being from a blended family, and, you know, your mom and I going through a divorce that was so hard, and yet me still working in the church. And so only having you part-time, that time that I had with you guys was so valuable. And so often the church was interrupting that, the work of the church was interrupting that, that I came to the place of realizing one of the reasons why I wanted to step away from that was because I didn't want to cheat you guys out of time. Were there ever times that you felt like dad is investing more into the church than he is into us?
I mean, I feel like at that time I was so young that I never really would have viewed it as that. I mean, I don't know what my older sister would say, but I feel like you were pretty quick in prioritizing us. So I don't know if I could really say that.
Yeah, I know that's something that you hear a lot of times from adult preachers' kids, is that dad loved other people's families more than he loved his own family. He spent more time with other people's families than he did with us. And that was something that I never wanted you guys to be able to say. Right. And I know that for a lot of pastors, adult pastors' kids, a lot of pastors, the nature of the occupation, and I hate to say that because it's not a job, it's a calling. It's a calling from God, and it's who you are, not what you do. But a lot of times you see, especially in smaller churches, which a lot of our listeners are leading in small churches, it requires a lot of moving. And so you're moving from church to church to church, a lot of times even from city to city, community to community. You experienced that over the course of a relatively short period of time, a couple of years, that we went from the church that, not the church that you grew up in, but the church that your formidable years were taking place in, that you've addressed several times, that you had a great hand in building from the ground up. Then we left that, started this house church that was really fun, really exciting, really nurturing, I think, and nourishing for our souls and our hearts at that time. And then that went away when I took the interim position to help this other church, which stretched on much longer than any of us ever thought that it would. And just now, in the last year or so, have we started to kind of reestablish roots in a local church. How did all of those changes and dynamics, going from 3 completely different looking worship experiences, how did that impact you, and what were your thoughts and feelings as all of those changes were taking place?
Yeah, I think it's important to have solid ground when, especially, you're starting out young and really figuring out your faith and who God is and what he means to you. And so kind of going in from all those different dynamics of all of these different churches can be kind of difficult to navigate. But I think that it's important to just find God in all of them, really, and just know that it's just about, that's what it's about.
Yeah, that's great. So how did growing up in the church, how did that shape your view of church and of Christianity as a whole?
Sometimes it can be complicated. I mean, you're going to have people that disagree, and you're not always going to agree with things that your pastor says and things that they're teaching. So I think, again, it's just, really having your strong faith and kind of just sticking to that as you navigate through all of those things.
Did you ever feel any added pressure being a preacher's kid?
Yeah, I feel like it's not necessarily something that was brought upon to be evil and intentionally, but I think that there's pressure from your peers and the other adults to, kind of, I guess, either follow in your parents' footsteps or, just be a certain way, act a certain way to remain, you're a good pastor's kid, like those things. And so,
did you ever feel any of those pressures from your family?
Not really. I mean, there's been some times that it's kind of just not really pressures that necessarily you have put on me, but that I've put on myself, thinking about it. But I think that the most important thing is, talking through that with you and kind of figuring that out that way.
Yeah. I know that there were times that I pushed you to use your gifts and your talents in areas of the church, and helping me lead worship and do different things like that. You have a long history with drama, and you've been very accomplished and successful in theater, and trying to push you to incorporate some of that into some different church things. Did that ever feel like an overbearing weight that I was putting on you?
No, not necessarily. I don't think at all. I mean, obviously sometimes it was nerve-wracking, never doing worship in church, and then, you're doing it almost every week. But really, it was just exciting. And all of those things felt like good pushes that weren't necessarily a lot of pressure, but, good stress, that it's like, yeah, I need to be more plugged in and helping out with the church and lightening it up with this worship.
Awesome. I love that. I'm glad to hear you say that I wasn't an overbearing, pushy father there that pushed you to do things that you didn't want to do, and pressured you into doing things that you didn't want to be a part of. So thank you for that.
It's a lie. That's why I'm on this podcast.
I will edit that bit out right there. Let's talk a little bit about how being a pastor's kid influenced your faith journey. I can remember when you were really young, you were pushing to be baptized. And from probably like 5-6 years old, you and your sister and your brother used to play church, and you would do baptisms in the hot tub. I think that you baptized your little brother probably about 50 times. And you asked several times that you wanted to be baptized. And yet when I would sit and talk to you about it, I never really felt like you really understood what that was all about. But then you had probably a 10-year period where that wasn't brought up again. And it wasn't until probably the last year and a half or so that you started asking questions again, inquiring. We started talking through some things. And then, as we said earlier, made the decision just a few weeks ago that you wanted to take that step in your faith. So talk to us a little bit about that faith journey that you went through, and how having that inside glimpse into the church affected that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like building a faith that's your own and that's just for you and God is something that is extremely important to me personally. And to me, I kind of see it as like Jesus is human, just like any of us are. So your relationship with him is going to be very personal and different to each person, like any relationship that you have now. And today, it's my relationship with my brother is not the same as your relationship with my brother. So that's kind of how I view it with my relationship with God and with Jesus. And so I feel like growing up as a pastor's kid and kind of watching your faith and having it be so strong and set in stone, it's almost like, oh, you know what, I'm set in stone. Like, I'm fine because my dad did all of that. My dad has a great relationship with Jesus. And so I think that it was kind of like, to me, it's like, oh, we're solid. It's great. I don't need to worry about all of that when I was young. But then, like you said, when I asked you about being baptized, it was really just because I felt like that's what my older siblings were doing and my friends were starting to do. And so it was just kind of like, oh yeah, this is the next step. Like, this is what I do, until, you kind of were like, no, take a step back. Like, what does this mean? What is this for you? And so I did. And over time, like, I kind of my journey with my faith was kind of a long one, like you said, like it was 10 years, but I feel like that's because I spent so long building it up so strongly that it's kind of almost like a fortress now, that like only me and God can get in and touch that. And so it's kind of like you need to spend those years asking questions until it was almost like you asking me, like, hey, when are you getting baptized? Like, what are your thoughts on this? And it was like, my answer was the same that you told me so long ago: when I'm ready, when me and God are ready. And so I think that it's just really important to separate your own faith from your pastor's, especially when it's, your father, so that you have your own personal relationship. And it's not just because, oh yeah, I go to church and my family is faithful, so that just automatically makes me faithful. But
man, I love that so much. I couldn't have said that any better myself, and I do this for a living. That was wonderful. And I think what you hit was just spot on, that I think so many times we inherit the faith of our fathers, and there has to become a moment in time in your life where your faith becomes your own. And it's not because it's what you were told your whole life. It's not because it's what you were presented and forced on your whole life, but it actually becomes yours. And you went on that journey. You made those discoveries. You built that foundation and that relationship. And I'm so, so proud of you for that. And hearing you talk about that and express that and share that is something that I think is really going to help a lot of people out there. And so thank you for doing that. What do you think? What do you think is some of the main reasons that we hear so many times about pastors' kids stepping away from the faith and stepping away from the church?
I think it's kind of like, it's just complicated for them, because I think that there could be a number of different reasons, like the pressure that they feel, or maybe because, a lot of times when kids are trying to figure out a lot of those personal things about themselves, they don't want to be tied to others that way. And so I think that when you have somebody in your life who's your parent and they're a pastor and God is so important to them, I think that that's the easiest thing that they can kind of latch onto is, oh, like, this is what my dad stands for. This is what he means. This is how I rebel. I think it's kind of just the easiest thing to, kind of pick at and be like, yeah, this is how I separate myself from that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One of the things that we talk a lot about in our home, but probably not even enough, honestly, if I'm being honest. I think it's discussed in our home, but probably not enough. Your older sister is a counselor, and she's working on her master's degree in clinical psychology and all of that. So those things are discussed a lot. Mental health is discussed a lot in our family. How did growing up as a pastor's kid, either positively or negatively, affect your mental well-being?
I think that, like with everything, there's both positive and negative, but it was almost like it was a healthy outlet to be able to, go to my dad and be like, what does the Bible say about feeling like this? Like, what does the Bible say about depression and anxiety? And give me a good outlet that the Bible says to focus on and turn to in times like this. And so I think that it can be a very valuable resource to have. But also on the other hand, I think that, there can be a lot of taboos in that as well, that it's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't talk like this. Like, God wouldn't want me to be sad or feel anxiety. And so, like, let's just push it down and not have it. So I think just finding the delicate balance between what's healthy and not is important.
Yeah, I think first off, to address that really quick, just in a daddy-daughter moment, God never says that you shouldn't feel sad. God never says that you shouldn't have those emotions. I meant that in kind of a if in God's perfect world, everybody is happy and everybody. So I feel like it's kind of to be similar in the way that why would God make me feel this way if God's supposed to only be good? Not necessarily he says that you're not supposed to feel this, but why does he make me feel this? Why am I able to feel this? Well, and we can go down a long, long rabbit trail on this, but God's original intention was for it to be that way. Yeah. But he also gave us this incredible gift of free will and being able to make choices. And because of those choices that we made, we chose to break that and allow sin to come in. And the consequence of that is that things don't go according to God's plan because we've made those choices. And when things don't go according to God's plan, which scripture tells us, the Bible tells us is good and pleasing and perfect, right? It says those words, that God's will is good, God's will is pleasing, God's will is perfect, that when we go away from God's plan, that's when those things are broken. And so God's plan isn't for you to feel sad. God's plan isn't for you to have anxiety. God's plan isn't for you to have depression. But when we break his plan, those things are a result of that. And yet, even in that, that's where Jesus comes in. Yeah. And Jesus says, I understand. And I take that brokenness. I take that sadness. I take that anxiety, and I take that to the cross with me. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And him saying that because of Jesus, that perfect, good plan will be restored again someday. And that's the hope that we have as Christians. That's the hope that we have in our faith. And I think that so oftentimes the church can say, it's not okay to feel that way. It's not okay to have depression. It's not okay to have anxiety. It's with Higher Ministries, what we do is help pastors and church leaders in those moments. It's one of those big things that we do as an organization. And there have been so many times that we've received phone calls and emails and text messages anonymously most of the time from people saying that it's not okay for Christians to feel depression. And every time I say you're ridiculous, it's those times where we lean into Jesus. And Jesus says, let me meet you in that. And be your strength and be your support and be your hope in those times. It's not that we're not supposed to feel them. It's where Christ can reveal himself most to us is in those moments. And it's things that he felt and he experienced as well. You have anything to add to that?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Sorry, that just went off the rails right there for a minute there. So what we're going to do right now, and we talked a little bit about this before, is we have a segment of our show that we call Pastor's Picks. And McKenna, you are an avid reader. And so I know that you've got a lot of insights for our listeners. And Camden, this might be even a chance where you want to jump in on the microphone and share something that you're watching, a movie that you've seen, a show that you've seen recently. So we're going to take a minute and do Pastor's Picks.
And now, Pastor's Picks. What are we reading? What are we watching? What are we listening to? Does anyone really care? Probably not. But we will tell you anyways.
All right, McKenna. So what have you been listening to? What have you been reading? What have you been watching? You and I have been having a daddy-daughter date that we're watching Stranger Things on Netflix. We should finish season 2 today, and that has been riveting. And our goal is to try to finish all 4 seasons before I drop you off for college in a couple of weeks.
I think we can do it.
So it's going to be tough. Looking at the timeline, it's going to be really difficult to get that done, but I'm willing to give it a shot. Last night you bailed on me and went to bed at 11 o'clock when we had one more episode.
Granny's bedtime.
One more episode in season 2. But so that's what I've been watching lately, along with a lot of the Olympics watching there. And that's been fun. Love the Olympics as it comes around. McKenna, what have you been reading, watching, listening to? What are your picks that you would love to share with our listeners?
Yeah, so obviously getting ready to go to college, I have not had a lot of time for reading and all the things that I usually love to do because of all the packing and all that intense stuff going on. But I have been listening to a really good podcast while doing all of this, and it's pretty fitting considering we're on a podcast. It's called Where Are All of the Aliens? It's by Conspiracy Theories on Spotify. I'm on a huge alien kick right now, and I think it's because of Stranger Things, probably.
So where are all the aliens?
That's what I'm trying to figure out, man.
Oh, you haven't figured it out yet?
Yeah, no.
You're always reading 2 or 3 books right now. Is there anything that you're reading right now that you're really into, that you really love?
I started this murder mystery kind of one. That's been pretty interesting. It's called Body Farm.
Body Farm.
So, yeah.
Your grandmother gave you that one to read, right?
She did.
Yeah. She doesn't listen to this show, so you can give your real feelings about it.
It's a little slow. It's a little interesting. It's in the middle of the series. So she just gave me this random one, and it's 7 books into this 13-book series. So it's a little difficult getting into, but I'm 200 pages in right now.
And you're wearing a Sam Bowie t-shirt right now.
Oh, yeah.
So is that what you're spinning on the record player right now?
Yeah, always with the Bowie.
Camden, you want to jump in on this? What are you watching?
I'm really not watching anything right now.
Did you finish Survivor? I know that you were watching Survivor for a while.
I have a couple episodes left in the season I'm on.
Yep, you've been investing a lot of time into the Olympics as well. You really enjoy the Olympics. It's the heart of baseball season, and you usually don't miss that. What are some of your favorite events to tune into at the Olympics?
Well, my favorite right now is probably the basketball. I think we've put together such an amazing team. It's really fun to watch.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. Have you watched much of the 3-on-3?
No, not at all.
I just heard today that Jimmer Fredette is part of the 3-on-3 team. He's really the only name that I recognized. I would ask you what you're reading right now, but I know you're not reading anything. Anything that you're listening to that you're particularly enjoying right now? No? All right. Anything else on Pastor's Picks, guys?
I don't think so.
That was Pastor's Picks.
I consider that a victory. We got your brother to actually say something on the microphone. So, and he did good. He sounded good. That was good. Maybe he'll chime in to the rest of this conversation a little bit more here. I want to kind of shift now and have you talk to, I know that we have a lot of preachers' kids, pastors' kids who listen to the show. And so I want to take a few minutes for you to address some things, so maybe to talk to them for a little bit. And then also you have the opportunity right now to talk to pastors. We've got Kobe in here normally it's Lola, the show dog, that comes and invades the recording, but this time it's Kobe, the silver lab, who's come in, and you hear the tail banging on, and she just wants Camden so badly. And Camden is the one who usually gives her the attention. But so we're going to take a few minutes and give you an opportunity to to share with other pastors who are listening on how they can better understand, relate, support their kids who are younger or maybe even as adults, and then also any preachers' kids who may be listening. So what advice would you give to other pastors' kids who may be going through some of the same situations that you've walked through? Now that you're turning 18 tomorrow, you're getting ready to leave home and go off to college. You've done the pastor's kid thing. What's some advice that you would give to other pastors' kids out there who are maybe just beginning this journey or in the middle of this journey?
Yeah. So being a pastor's kid, like, the biggest tool that you have at your disposal is your parent who is a pastor. I think that asking questions and initiating conversations about anything, even if it's not necessarily religion or Bible related, I think that it's so important to just create a space where, you know, you can talk and ask questions pertaining to whatever you need answers to. Get it off your chest. Yeah.
Is that hard to do sometimes?
It can be. Yeah, it can be really difficult. But I think that the more you do it and the more you ask questions, the easier it'll be until, you know, you can just ask anything that you need answers to.
So you've done some interesting things as a child that you handled in really incredible ways. You're one that there's not a lot of people like you that when you want something, you fight for it. And when you want something, you push for it. When you want something, you really, it's difficult to tell McKenna no if it's something that she really wants. And how intimidating can it be when there's something that you want, something that's important to you that seems to go outside of the norm of traditional Christianity?
I don't know. I mean, what do you mean? Like,
so like, I can remember when you were young, and I don't even remember how old. You could probably tell how old. When I was a kid, and then in the churches that we've worked in, this really hasn't been an issue. So this maybe isn't a fair question for you, but I know it's something that a lot of pastors' kids deal with. When I was growing up, the idea of, for me as a guy, I got my ear pierced when I was 17 years old. And that was completely taboo, that boys shouldn't do that. You shouldn't get that done. And I can remember you coming to me. I want to say you were probably 14 years old or so. And you said you wanted to get your nose pierced. And I was like, no, you're not doing that. And you put together an entire PowerPoint presentation of all of the reasons why that was okay for you to do that. You, not that this is taboo in any way, even in the most traditional of church settings, but you made the decision when you were, 8 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, I don't remember what it was now, that you were going to be a vegetarian. And you did this whole big explanation on why you were doing this and why this was important to you, and why you needed us to respect that, and it not only be okay with it, but encourage and support your decision. Were those things hard for you to do with your dad being someone who carries such a leadership role and strong personality? We'll put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it can be kind of difficult, but what I always say is just match your energy. Like, if you're coming at it strong, like, no way, you're not doing this. Like, make a PowerPoint presentation. Be like, yes, way I am doing that. Okay, maybe not. Maybe that's a terrible advice, but I think that especially with having, you know, that parent being a pastor, like, a lot of times it'll be like, you shouldn't do this. This is not traditional. This is, you know, not a maybe good thing to do. Like, for example, getting your nose pierced or your ears pierced. I went and did my research in the Bible and found out that it was very common in biblical times for women to get piercings. And
you did do that.
I did do that. So I think that that's also a great tool that you can use in future arguments like that.
Use the Bible against them.
Heck yeah. Learn your Bible, and it'll be a very valuable tool that you can have.
McKenna, what would you say? Let's now ask the same question to the pastors, to either the mom or dad who's a pastor in ministry. What advice, what tips do you have for them on how they can better support their kids?
I mean, it kind of piggybacks off of the last, second to last question that we just did. I think that making it a safe space for your kids to ask those questions about the Bible and about Christianity and really just everything in general, that it's like, if your kid comes to you with a question that you may seem silly or like, oh my gosh, you should know this at your age, I think it's important to be like, no, let me take a step back. Like, let me answer this for you. And, really just have it be a conversation instead of a lecture, and just really making your kids comfortable to be able to come to you and ask questions. Because like you said, sometimes that can be hard for kids, especially if, their parent's a pastor and has their own strict set in stone ways. I think it's very important to just, make a safe space to really have conversations about things.
How much have you found that your faith is shaped at home versus being shaped in a church?
I think it kind of varies. I think that a lot of times, growing up as a pastor's kids, the things that you learn in church are a lot of the same things that you learn at home. Like, it's not like you go to church and your pastor is telling you one thing and then you come home and your parents telling you the other, because, they're one and the same. So I think that sometimes it can be, a little more tricky to navigate that. And kind of, I don't want to say personas, because obviously, like, you're you no matter what you're doing, but, figuring out, okay, he's in pastor mode, like, let me listen to really what he's teaching me, and kind of separate that from, oh, we thought about my room being clean 2 minutes ago. Like, let's put that aside and navigate, at church and then later at home.
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit. And you can be completely honest here. And if I don't like what you say, I'll just edit it out. One of the things that you hear a lot from preachers' kids, pastors' kids that have had bad experiences and walk away from their faith or walk away from the church as adults is they say, the dad that we saw on Sunday was not the dad that we saw Monday through Saturday. And the way that you cared for people, the way that you acted, the way that you talked to people, the way that you treated your family was much different when you were in pastor role on Sunday or Wednesday night as the person that we had to live with at home. What was that like for you guys? What was that like for you seeing? Was there a difference between dad on Sunday and dad the rest of the week? Was there something that, oh, here we go, and we're flipping a switch into this? Or did you see consistency? And again, you can be completely honest there.
For the most part, I definitely feel like it was pretty consistent. I mean, to me personally, it was more of like, oh, dad's working. Like, this is work dad mode, not necessarily like, oh, he's going to be putting on this whole like loving Christian persona, but it's going to be like, no, he's working. Like, he's got things to do. He's got people to reach out to and love on and pray for. So give him the space to be able to do that and, kind of step back and like realize that. And then at home, you can kind of goof off and he's your dad and all these things. So I think that it was never really anything harsh, but it definitely was like, okay, be more professional. Like, he's going to be more professional in this setting, kind of just like, taking your kid to work day.
One of the things that Amanda and I have had many conversations about is that how do we bring the church into the home? Mm-hmm. And it's something that, I'll be honest, we've talked a lot about that we've failed at. And we've tried so many different things, to say, let's not have the only time that we pray as a family being when we sit down to eat. And we've tried doing different things, at Christmas time, doing the Advent wreath and spending time as a family to talk through that and spend some time there. We've had the moments where we pull out the guitar and sit in the living room and just sing worship songs together. But I think that's something that we have not done a great job of as a family is really bringing church into the home. And we did house church for 1.5 years. So that's different, but that was different because that was pretty set. What are things that you would have liked to have seen done more in the home as far as bringing the church into the home?
So quality time is definitely my love language, 100%. I like just, being around the people that I love and that I care for. And so I think that having moments where, we just all really work it to put down our phones and focus on each other and on God. And whether that's, worshiping or praying or doing devotions, things like that, I think would have been nice, like once or twice a day, just kind of get out of your own like little bubbles and let's all can join them and let's all be in the same bubble together with God. I think that's really the main thing that I would say.
Yeah, I love that. And I wish that was something that we could go back and do different, do more of. I think that there are a lot of things that I wish that we could change going back with you now turning 18 tomorrow and going off to college. I am amazed, blown away at the young woman that you have turned into and that you have become, and so proud to be your dad and in sending you off into the big, bad, real world. I have so much faith and confidence in you and what you're going to do and what the Lord is going to do in you and through you and with you. And oh man, I'm just so proud of you. And want to thank you so much for the inspiration, the example that you have been to me, to so many others, to your little brother who's sitting over here. And yeah, thank you. It has been the utmost privilege to be your daddy. And yeah, I'm so excited to see how you continue on in your faith journey and in your life.
Thanks.
So we like to end our show a lot of times with a segment that has become really a fan favorite of the Small Church Podcast. And McKenna, I know that you've been excited for this. So let's finish out the show with signs.
Can't you read the sign? Sign, everywhere a sign.
It was me reading the sign. Which was my sign? Here's your sign.
Tweet others the way you would like to be tweeted.
That is a good one, McKenna. There's a lot of insight into that, and that's your sign of the week.
Sign, everywhere a sign. Can't you read the sign?
Well, there's your sign, guys, for the week, brought to you by McKenna Marr. Tweet others as you would like to be tweeted. McKenna, as we wrap things up, is there anything else that you would like to say? Any other thing that you would like to share with our listeners? Anything that you prepared or any thoughts that you've had as we've been having this discussion today?
I don't think so, but thank you so much for having me on here and giving me this opportunity. It's fun.
Camden, you have anything that you would like to say?
No.
We're getting a head nod. We did get a nope out of him, though. All right, so we do want to thank you for listening to this edition of the Small Church Podcast. I want to give a huge thank you to my special guests, Camden and McKenna, my son and daughter, for being a part of this last minute and taking the time to prepare and plan. And we want to thank you, our listeners, for tuning in to another edition of the Small Church Podcast. If you are a preacher's kid and you would like help in navigating the life of being a PK, I know that McKenna would love to talk with you more. You can reach out to her through us at higherministries.com. We would also love to hear your experiences being a pastor and a pastor's kid. And so you can join the conversation on our Facebook page, Instagram, or shoot us a note on our website at higherministries.com. Again, be sure to subscribe to the Small Church Podcast, share it, listen to it, and like it wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Thanks for listening. Thanks again to my kids for being our guests. And we hope that you'll join us again next week on the Small Church Podcast. Have a great rest of your week.